Hello my loves. I am not in a good mood today. I have hardly slept, so I'm really tired. I'm on my period and it's really hot in the UK at the moment and I don't do well with heat. So just generally not feeling it today, and therefore I'm just in the mood to complain. I want to talk about the things in books that annoy me, that are my icks, my pet peeves, whatever you want to call them. Just the things that personally, when these things are in books or occur in books, annoy me and sometimes make me not want to read it. Some of these are incredibly petty, and I am fully aware that some of these are incredibly petty. It's just one of those days. I'm sure you understand. You get it. As with anything like this where I share an opinion about something I don't like, this is just my opinion. I feel like some of these things I probably have seen some people talk about, so they're not like wild or controversial opinions, but I do appreciate that some of them are probably just me, and not everyone is going to dislike these things, and that's fine. If you personally don't have a problem with these things, good for you. I'm glad, in fact, because you probably have a more enjoyable experience than me in a lot of books. These are just things that I don't like. Just my opinion, just me. If you like them, it's okay. I just want to complain. I would, however, love to hear your pet peeves, icks, whatever you want to call them when it comes to books, because let's all complain together. Let's all be in a bad mood together. The first one I feel like probably a lot of people will agree with me on, because I see people moan about this a lot, and that is long chapters. I can't even really tell you why this annoys me, because fundamentally I know reading, I don't know, 4 short chapters is the same as reading 1 long chapter, but if it's all in 1 chapter, I don't like it anymore. If I'm reading on my Kindle and I see like 20 minutes or more left in the chapter, I immediately don't want to read that chapter. If I'm reading a physical book and it's like more than 20 pages in a chapter, sometimes even less than that, sometimes more than 15, I no longer want to read it. I will read it, but I will be annoyed the whole way through because I'm aware that I need to read more to finish this chapter. I think it's the wanting that tangible progress and completion that comes with finishing a chapter, and that is delayed from you. Long chapters that have the little breaks in them, fundamentally I get that is the same as shorter chapters. I can just take a break there, but it's still a chapter and it still doesn't feel like the same amount of progress as if I'd got to the end of a chapter. So I don't like it. It discourages me. It feels overwhelming when there is a really long chapter. So I would please give me all the short chapters. That works better for me, and all books should be catered to me. The next one is British characters being written by American authors. Hear me out. Not always. So, sometimes it's okay, but a lot of the time, bordering on most of the time, it's really abundantly obvious that that person has never spent, and when I say that person, I mean the author, has never spent a considerable amount of time around British people. When I say British people for this purpose, when we're talking about in books, I obviously mean English people, and by English people I mean people from London, and by people from London I mean upper class people from London, because that is always what is gone for in books, in my opinion anyway. Don't get me wrong, I hate England as much as the next person. It's a garbage country, I would know. I live here. So it's not the fact that it's like inaccurate or like I feel particularly patriotic or want good representation of English people in books. I don't really care about that. What I care about is that it takes me out of the experience, and I then become very aware that I'm reading a story, because someone will just casually say the wrong word for something that we would never use, or it's like mentioned so often about their accent that it just really pulls me out of the story. I'm no longer reading the story, I'm getting annoyed because I'm aware that I'm reading a story and the proper research hasn't been done to make that accurate. And I feel like there are some, Americanization of the English language is happening, where with, social media, and especially like younger kids like living their lives on social media and watching a lot of American TV shows now. There is a lot of Americanization of words, but still not to the level where I wouldn't read them like in a book, someone calling trousers pants and think, yeah, they've just, that's just what they've said, they've just picked that up, because that's a very different word in England. That is your underwear, so we wouldn't say that. So it's more about the immersion. That's why it bothers me. And again, not all authors, just, I can't off the top of my head think of any American authors that have written British characters well, but that might just be because they wrote them so well that I assumed they were British. Love triangles, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm not Pythagoras. I do not love triangles. I think it's unnecessary in a lot of cases. I don't think it adds anything to the story or plot or character development a lot of the time, especially because in a lot of more recent romance books or like fantasy romance books where there's a love triangle, it is always kind of toxic but hot guy who we've just met versus really nice guy that we've known for our whole lives, but they've done one thing wrong, and for some reason that one thing is unforgivable, and so we always pick the first one, the one that we've just met. Not only do I think it doesn't add anything to the story, I don't like it. I don't like seeing that dynamic and characters getting upset over things like that. I don't find it interesting or enjoyable, but also I think currently it's so repetitive. It's like you know which one's going to be picked and what's going to happen, so it doesn't really add anything in that sense either, because you already know. If you love triangles, if you are Pythagoras, please tell me why. Give me your reasoning, because I don't think I've ever met someone or spoken to someone who likes love triangles in a book. So I would be really interested, if you do like them, to know why and what you feel like they add or what you enjoy about them, because I just can't see it. It's just not for me. It's just not for me. The next one, I can't tell if it's like really petty or like if other people are going to agree, but if there's dialogue of two different characters on one line, and I feel like this doesn't happen very often, so this is like quite a small complaint, which is probably why it's petty, but it really, really bothers me. I feel like one of my earliest memories of like English language classes or like writing, creative writing classes at school, in primary school, was new speaker, new line. So I feel like it's a basic. I feel like it's the thing you should do. If someone different is talking, you put it on a new line. It is incredibly confusing when you have one bit of dialogue, a little bit in the middle with some kind of action, and then someone else's dialogue. And it always takes me like 2-3 times to read it again to work out what's happening and who's talking, because suddenly I'm halfway through the conversation, it doesn't make sense anymore because I'm reading it from the wrong people's point of view. If I have to reread something that many times that should be really clear for it to make sense, I don't think that's good writing. I appreciate it's usually supposed to be like quick speech or like quick interruption or quick action in between, and it's supposed to show that, but I feel like you can still do that and make it quite clear who's talking and when. So yeah, I don't like it. I really don't like it.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
And you know, fiction, literature, writing, it is an art. There are no rules. You can express yourself however you want, but I feel like with things like that, there are conventions that are there for a reason, and you should follow them because it makes readers' lives a lot easier. Please and thank you. The next two are kind of linked. The first one is the overuse of tropes in marketing books, or as I would call it, the fanfication or the fanfiction marketing technique. All of these tropes stem from fanfiction tags. When you are looking for fanfiction on whatever your platform of choice is for fanfiction, be it AO3, Wattpad, back in the day fanfiction.net, Tumblr, you know, whatever you're looking for, there are those tags for tropes, and it's helpful for fanfiction because you already know the characters, and sometimes, yeah, it might be within the plot that's already in the original media, but quite often it's like just a side story or a separate universe or a retelling of something in a different way or from someone else's point of view. You don't need to know the plot, you just need to know what is happening in this actual fic, this little tiny portion of these people's lives that was not included in the original media. So you don't need introduction to characters, you don't need anything about like the theme or the genre or anything like that, because I suppose genre doesn't really exist in fan fiction. It kind of does, but not in the same way it does in real fiction. Whoa, no. No, fan fiction is real fiction. I didn't mean to say that. I'm very sorry. This has become a thing because A, it's really easy, especially in short form content, to just say those tropes. But also, I don't know if it stems from a lot of fan fiction now being turned into, you know, original stories and published, and it's kind of flown over from that. I just feel like it doesn't fit and it doesn't work in a story where you haven't met the characters, you have no idea what the plot's like or what the world's like. You can't just market a book with trope. There's then the overuse of certain tropes to try and draw people in, but the marketing will have like a trope in it that isn't really accurate or isn't really there. Example being, I loved this series of books, but the Filthy Rich Vampire books that I read recently, it says on the back it's fake dating. It really is not. Yeah, there's a mention of it, but it is not fake dating, like, at all. But I bought it because it was marketed as that. And yes, I still enjoyed it, but I feel like it's almost like cashing in on these things to like grab people's interest, and it's just become like meaningless because a lot of the time all of these tropes are put in and then they're barely there. And I think the important distinction here for me is that in fan fiction, the tropes, the tags, are specifically the things you're looking for. You're already comfortable with the characters and the world and all of that. You are just looking for those elements. In a published book, in my opinion, those things are additions. They're not the main thing. Maybe they might be in some books, but in the majority of cases, when it's marketed in that way, they're not the main thing. They're just an addition or a thing that's there. They're not a big enough part of it, I don't think, to actually give you a proper idea of what you're gonna be reading. And I know I do it sometimes when I'm reviewing books, is I will say like, oh, this has like found family elements and stuff like that, because that seems to be what we're leaning more towards, but I don't actually think it's a helpful way of looking at books, and it should stay in the fan fiction world. The second one that relates to this is the n-ification of female main characters. Now, if you're not fan fiction worldy, YN means your name, and there's a particular genre of fan fiction that is like reader insert. The main character doesn't have a name, everything is just like YN, and it's supposed to be like, you fill in your name here so you can be in the story. Obviously those characters have to be kind of bland in a way, because if you give them any defining traits or characteristics physically or anything, people aren't gonna be able to relate to it. And I know in published fiction there has always been a thing of you want people to relate to your characters, but they still have traits. And I feel like a lot of the female main characters, especially in popular like romantasy books, are just YN. They have a physical description, but they're just YN. Their behavior is incredibly YN, and I don't know how to explain it. If you know what I mean, you know. If you don't, you don't, and you need to go and read some YN fan fiction. They just have that YN energy, unfortunately, and I hate it. I hate it. Another thing that I feel like is quite, it's not in the fan fiction like sphere, but I think it is also something that comes with those trope heavy marketed books, YN female main character, and that is all the men, all the male love interests being giant. Do we really need another book where the guy is like 8 foot tall and every other sentence is the female main character YN saying how big he is? No, I don't think we do. I love you, Ali Hazelwood, but Ali Hazelwood is very guilty of this. It's incredibly boring when physically every relationship dynamic in these books is the same. Give us some short kings. Give us like 6 foot tall beefy women. Why do they need to all be tiny? And this is the YN. This is it. They are tiny, but somehow they can kill people and are really strong, and just they manage to succeed in everything. But they're still super really tiny and really weak, and they need their big strong man. I hate it. I really, really, really hate it, because as much as you can say, oh, these female characters are really strong and they lead fictional countries and they fight in wars and they ride dragons and all of that, at the end of the day, there is always the big strong man being like, I'm gonna come and save you. And the female main character is always like, no, I don't want you to save me, but she does. And it's just then thinly veiled, that classic dynamic there. I don't like it. Let's change it up. Let's do things differently, please. Not all men are massive. Not everyone needs to be Greg Davies. I've also talked about the next one before because I'm noticing it more and more often, and it just really gets to me. And that is like insane love declarations after having like 3 conversations with someone. I appreciate there's all of these mythical things in these books, but there are elements of them that are still realistic, or you want them to be at least somewhat realistic. It makes me not be able to relate to the character, because why are you obsessed with this person and feel like you're in love with them when you have had, yeah, literally like 3 conversations, and every conversation you've had with them has been about the current plot situation, or they've had an argument with you and you literally know nothing about them. You don't love them, you are not in love with them, you are just attracted to them, but you're giving each other all of these love declarations and then like getting married. There are some books that I would like to realistically see what the couples are like after like the war or whatever conflict is happening in them. Obviously I'm talking about fantasy books here. Is over. Like, do these relationships actually last? What do they talk about when there isn't a war going on, or they're arguing about using magic for a certain purpose, or the female main character YN risking her life to do something? Like, what do they actually talk about? What do they spend their time doing? Because they don't know each other. What are they doing? You know, I would just like to see that post-conflict relationship and see how many of them would actually last. The final thing, this is the thing that I don't know that anyone's going to agree with me on this. I don't listen to audiobooks very much. Basically, I listen to audiobooks that comedians have written, where I like the comedian and they've also narrated it. That seems to be my enjoyable place for audiobook. I try and listen to actual fiction audiobooks, and I can't, for this reason. I cannot stand the narrator putting on different voices. I hate it. Unless you're like a fantastic impersonator, they just always sound a bit shit. And this might just be like a very me being autistic thing, would much prefer someone just reads me a story in their actual voice as they're just reading it. And I know audiobooks are supposed to be like a performance or like more interactive and to keep you engaged, but it just, I've spent so long getting used to the voices that sound stupid in my opinion, and then getting thrown by them again every so often, especially if there's like accents that the person, obviously it's not their accent and they're not like, you know, fantastic at it. It just, I then can't concentrate on the book, so all I'm thinking about is the stupid voice and how much I don't like it. So I feel like that is maybe more of a me thing. If you know of any books where they're just read quite monotone, quite boring, or like any audiobook narrators that do that, like that's their specialty, let me know, because I would listen to that absolutely fine. I listened to some of Salem's Lot as an audiobook recently, and there's like a bit in there where a baby was speaking, I think, and the guy had to do a baby voice, and it wasn't supposed to be funny, but it was just funny. It was really funny. Again, I think it's an immersion thing. It then takes me out of the story because I'm then hearing that voice and not enjoying it, or like thinking about it too much, or having to get used to it too much. So I'm not just thinking about the story itself. That is all of the pet peeves or icks or whatever that I can think of. I'm so sorry for being so negative, but I watched Inside Out again recently, and that film taught me that All of your emotions are important. I would love to hear the things that bother you about books. It doesn't just need to be about the book itself. It could be like bookish around books as well. I know like really common ones are things like dog earing pages or like cracking spines and things like that. I am really sorry, I do those things. I don't purposefully crack spines, but I don't really care if they do. And I have like 3 bookmarks, but I just leave them around the house and then forget about them. So I do turn down pages. It doesn't really bother me. So yeah, we're all different and it's all fun. So let me know the things that annoy you. I hope wherever you are, you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.